right, what's going on, ICA? Trying to do this a little bit earlier today because I ended up with some other commitments later on tonight. But I wanted to go over what happened here with NVIDIA because I want to be clear, like, there's some interesting headlines going on right now. The one that I posted in the Discord, let me share the Discord actually. The one that was actually the headline was NVIDIA earnings fall short, Q3 forecast misses by 1 billion. So their forecast moving forward here, it says that the revenue, they ended up with 6.7 billion expected versus 6.5 last year, okay? But then their adjusted revenue, right? Last year it was expected. So look at it this way. If I were to show you this, what Yahoo is saying, okay, the headline is extremely fearful. All right, I want to point that out. It's extremely fearful. Falls shorts, misses by 1 billion, okay? And what ended up happening was we have this first very quick reaction. I'll show you on the charts in a moment. And then we had a quick reaction back, and then we slowly came down. So I kind of want to point that out, and we'll go into the charts right here so I can show you that. Look at this. The earnings indicator here is green, guys. All right. What was Yahoo even saying? Oh, compared to last year though, but even the estimate was 50 cents and they actually beat it by 1%. Okay. They reported a couple $1 million over the estimate. So when you think about it, the professionals that estimate this, right, the consensus of what was expected were kind of on the dot. And however, though, the news itself is kind of scaring the hell out of people, right? So what ended up happening is we came back down to the bottom of the channel where this 4 is, but you can also imagine, right, A, B, C, that type of reaction is actually, it wouldn't, it's nothing crazy in terms of like it took such a crazy dump. All right. So the after hours reaction, let's pull that up here. Okay, I'm just putting extended hours, automatic. Look, it kept going down. All right. So you can imagine we could draw a quick little fib from that high to this low. And if you see, all right, respect to the 0.5, came down, bounced down further. Okay. And so right now we'll see where we end up opening up with NVIDIA, but it's not as if the company is doing poorly. All right, keep that in mind. The headlines, I do believe, are very, very misleading. Yes, they're making less money than before, but there's a lot of other factors within the markets and the economy that are causing this. All right. Profit margin, let's see, quarterly here, income statement. All right, this will update soon. We'll talk about that and all. Okay. Technicals technically say sell, but analyst ratings say to buy. Price targets high in terms of that. All right, that's just what TradingView has to say for us. Now, let's go back into what I had charted too. What did I have charted right here? I had us charted into pretty much an ABC correction after that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on our NVIDIA here. So it's not surprising just to see that it broke down below this a little, right? But so it broke down below this because here, this blue line, that's where we're at. But notice where we're finding support in the after hours right now, right where that relief down to 4 was, okay? And isn't, remember when I taught Elliott wave, how 1, 2, 3, right? 4 is sometimes a little bit longer, and 5, and then what you end up having afterwards is you just have that big ABC correction, right? A, B, C. And remember, I like to tell you guys that that's usually the one that heads back toward where 4 is, okay? So, kind of uncanny, right? The way that this looks, the way that this reacted. So yeah, my original prediction was off the top of this white, the top of this white wedge channel, right? How it could bounce off of that. Well, we broke down below it. So right now we have to keep in mind, we do now have to consider the new channels that we will respect. Right now we're in the shelf, if you might imagine, okay? If we break down below this, keep in mind, there's this range down here that these prices will be entertained if we break down below, right? Because there are little bits of gaps as well. There's a big gap right here too. So if we break down below this, right, where previous for this 4 went, let me give you exact numbers right here. So if I go in here, we're just gonna magnetize it. We're just gonna draw a horizontal ray at the bottom of this 4, okay? Let me zoom in, make sure it's at the bottom of the wick. Okay, where we are after hours, oh, it's right at it. We broke it a tiny bit, so keep that in mind. We could be headed further down because here, let's see. This one, right? We're gonna start entertaining those lower values if we break below. So keep in mind, what happens at market open, very oftentimes, you'll get an idea of what the true reaction is gonna be. I see from the news that it's very likely that there's gonna be a lot of fear, but it feels kind of trappy to me in my opinion of what's being said. So I wouldn't be surprised if we head back down here, fill this gap, and then head back up from there. So keep in mind, right, this ABC correction itself, let's do a quick little gauge right now of the so we'll use the extension here. Top of 5 to the bottom here, and then we're just going to measure it from the bottom where B is. Okay. We could even just bounce from here. Okay. All right. So remember, there is this gap right here. And so I do think we're headed toward that. Do we bounce from there or do we bounce from after filling the gap? We'll have to see. All right. How much selling there is, I definitely could see it go through the gap and then bounce up. Then though, we'll have to be careful because then we have to keep in mind there's this trend line and this downward white trend line. Let me make sure this downward white trend line is still drawn properly up here. Okay. Yep. Okay. So let's see if this one over here, I extended it, it doesn't do anything major. So just keep that up here. Okay. All right, that's NVIDIA. Before we even go into SPY, let's look at our VIX. Look at it, VIX relaxed. If you think about it, what happened during the markets today? We do have this gap below, but I think right now we're just testing this white trend line. So remember, after that pop, it usually takes a few days before the news starts to settle. People start to take a reaction. And see, look, the line that I had charted here, everything happened faster, if you may. Let me give you more detail in here. Okay. So bounced around up here. Okay. From here, it went down all the way down here, right? Now we haven't completely relaxed back up, but I want to point out with our indicators, we're having these curls upward, right? So keep in mind, it's starting to show that, hey, there are buyers stepping in to an extent, upholding these levels. Now, if you look more closely at this, and I'm going to take off the extended hours. Here real quick. Do you notice how this is ultimately the shelf that we're going to be trading in for now? Okay. And it is starting to create a bit of that shoulder, the head, and then a potential shoulder. So keep that in mind. If we do create that and we notice that there's a lot less volume down here versus up here, right? Then we potentially could come back down, and keep in mind there's this gap down here that we're aiming for. There's also this one down here, this one. So there's a couple gaps below us. And so, you know, imagine right now how, right, this bear market that we're in, we've had our A, B, C, right? And then you can imagine it's could be a ABC link up here. And we could do another like ABC again, right? And that would just create what we call a double correction here. Now, sorry about that. What else do I happen to see in our SPY? Keep in mind, we've got some good volume below. Hey, hello. We've got some good volume below here at the shelf, right? So imagine that if we are to break down below, it's going to take a while to get through all this supply here. Okay, same with above. We're in kind of a chop zone right now. Imagine that between this 400 to 425 range at this point. I do also think it's very possible and likely we're going to come back and retest this right now. Okay, if we break up above, or if we stay below, that's going to come down to what the Fed happens to do at this time in September. Okay, so mid-September we have another Fed meeting, and they're going to decide if they're going to do that 75 or 20 or 50 basis point raise, or you know what the markets currently expect is that they're going to be lower in terms of they're going to aim for maybe 50, or even surprise us with 25 is what the markets are saying. That's why we had this. Okay, why they would do that is because, and why they did that was because the markets here saw that inflation potentially had peaked. Okay, but the other side of the argument is that the CPI data often is gamed in a way, and if the CPI data has shown, oh yeah, it relaxed for a month, but right now, energy and these other costs might spike suddenly. We just saw energy spike today and yesterday. The idea here is that they might use this opportunity and the fact that the markets are doing a little bit better to put in a bigger hike, right? Maybe it does this again, to do a bigger hike, and then that causes a lower leg as well. So again, nobody knows what exactly they're doing. I mean, if you happen to know, please let me know. But again, what they're trying to do behind closed doors, we can only guess and take our own, perceptions as to what could happen, and prepare ourselves as to what the reaction and what the markets themselves will be thinking. Now, the hard part about that is trying to stay a step ahead, right? Because right now everybody's got their eyes on that. So this was originally the pricing in of, hey, they don't have to be as harsh with the interest rates. But additional data starting to come out, and that's why we're struggling here, that says, hey, there is still some problems with the economy, and there's still, ultimately a bit of, we still see certain symptoms of that inflation may still be high, and it could come back and bite us in the ass again. So how they deal with it, we can only try to guess. Keep that in mind, okay? Let's jump into, I said what was I gonna go over today? I've got a whole list here. Okay. QQQ kind of did what I said before, went up, and then it's come back down. tech, you got to keep in mind there's starting to be a little bit more, a little bit more risk on, meaning that people are willing to take the risk of putting money into tech. We peaked over here, and keep in mind, right where we peaked was also, and the relaxation of it had a lot of these divergences that did appear. Okay, so again, this is an expected sell-off for that move up because it moved up so hard and so quickly. Okay, where we are as well isn't anything major either. We haven't broken any major resistance levels, etc. We're just essentially in what we like to call the golden pocket, right? The golden pocket being this little range and this little area. We're just kind of sitting around in there right now, okay? You could even take the lower bound of this and try to measure just the last fib move. So maybe something like this. And it's showing that it's come down to 0.618. Or if you go from down here, it's showing it's at exactly the 0.382. Okay, so let me delete this one so it's not as here. Okay, actually real quick with that too. Notice now we're now below the point of control, but we're still within a very heavy trading area, trading range. If I zoom back out, notice how the point of control is a bit further up though. And that there is this entire shelf that we still haven't broken through, right? That's where my green arrow originally pointed at. That's where we rejected from, okay? 1, 2, 3. I think I was trying to say with this before that we could be doing a 1, 2, and this could be our 3, 4. This might take a little bit, and then we have a potential 5. And so this 4 could still come back further down. Notice how much room you could come all the way down here before it heads back up, all right? There's gaps above and below, so just be aware. There's been quite a lot of movement, but this gap above, I do think, looking at these indicators, the 2 hour, the 1 hour, okay? And even if you want to notice now, the day's not quite there, but the RSI is at 50, and the day on the stochastic is getting kind of low. So I wouldn't be surprised with that, right? Our indicators are starting to want to turn up. We very potentially could come back to fill this gap up here. Okay. DXY, the dollar index, relaxed a little bit. The last 2 days, it's still headed up and testing that very top of the channel. So the candle we have today shows a little bit of, not exactly indecision, but it's more just like, hey, we could be headed down. All right. Let's really quick with this adjust if we need to. Yeah, we got to adjust this in our details here. So we're still in this uptrend. All right, there's that, and then there's that. If I were to kind of ignore just this little area, right? And we try, popped out of it a little bit, but so DXY does look like it's going to try, and especially with the state of the world economy, very likely is going to test out these highs again. And if it does break down a little, there's no real head and shoulders formation that is really prominent here. So, just understand that we might just do some sort of A, B, C type of correction before going further up, okay? This could just be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's look at, I want to zoom out because this is also on the 15-minute. on the daily. We might have some more time, according to this. According to this, we could be doing this is a 1, 2. And if we want to call this the 3, 4, and this to be our 5 up here, then it looks like we could have a B, C, or even C before we head up. So that's one possible theory. Yeah, that's what I see right now. Unless we were to say that the ABC happened in here already, but I don't think that's significant enough for a full correction. I think it's, keep in mind, this could go up further too. So, or ABC could correct this way. That or this. We'll have to continue and monitor how that looks. But I would say it's not a bad idea right here to set an alert for your DXY if it breaks up above. All right, PCC, that's also, PCC looked real interesting because we started off very bullish throughout the day. It was actually quite low if you look at just this last candle down here. And we ended up close to even, all right? Even though the last few days we had a lot of puts, or at least more puts than calls, okay? And notice this candle yesterday. Okay, this is almost 1.5 right here. Let me point that out. That's almost 1.5, meaning there are 3 puts for every 2 calls. Okay, so that hasn't happened since 2020, right? Back here in March and April. So is it possible that there's more, volatility and fear that is going to start creeping back into the markets? Well, keep in mind, that is currently what we do think with the VIX. The thing about it as well is there's kind of this ticking time clock with China's mortgage crisis, and there's about like 30 days before they end up defaulting on certain things. And there's also, like right now, remember I was pointing out that the euro is worth less. It was just equivalent. Now it's worth less than the dollar. Okay, so a lot of things are happening with other currencies around the world, and that's also creating additional, fear and volatility, and that's what you'll see here. Let's jump into Tesla real quick because Tesla is expecting their split. Now, in terms of what a split does, oh, hey, right, from where I charted, it did go back up toward the top of that channel, right to this red line, and then we came back down. So I predicted it, came back down, looking just like another ABC correction right here. ABC, okay? This does have hints of a Wyckoff accumulation, right? In terms of it, let's go over it very quickly. It's a smaller version, because keep in mind, there's also a potential bigger picture here that is happening. But this small accumulation, right? Preliminary supply, first sell off and come back. Then you have your selling climax, your automatic reaction showing that it favored going back up, and then secondary test, and then last points of supply before these signs of strength came in. Okay, this breaking out, okay, Notice this, low buy up to get out of this range, right? Shows that there's not very many sellers left down here. Okay, so it created this trading range. Notice this big green candle with earnings broke it out of the trading range. From there, it had its retest, its last point of supply, signs of strength, other last points of supply, etc. So this, especially with the split, okay, what does a split do? The price is a bit expensive, so a split makes it so that it's more affordable. Does that increase our supply or demand? It's a misconception that it increases supply because the value, it's just being divided by a different number, but it's not as if you're increasing the number of shares or diluting your Tesla. What it's doing is it's making it more affordable for people to buy pieces of it. So as a result, it's an increase in demand, all right? However, in a split situation, what would you be doing if you were big money, right? If you were sitting on the side saying, this is how we're going to make money off of the little people, off the public. So my expectation is actually, we're probably going to go head back up toward this level here. But then after the splits kind of settled for a few days and they've sold, off what they could and the public bought what they wanted to with the split, it'll probably head back down, putting some people underwater. That's kind of what I expect. So this could be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'll get a short 5, and then probably like a big ABC back down before we determine from there. Okay. I wouldn't be surprised if we come back down toward the top range of this, and this turns into a mini distribution type of situation. Tesla overall as a company, I love them, they're great, but there's just certain things that, again, price to earnings ratio, certain things that don't make sense about it in terms of valuation. All this perceived value is all based upon future growth and the ability to maintain all of it through time too. All right. I wanted to go over AMD and Roblox. We talked about AMD the other day. Just a little quick little visual of it, looking like we're going through that accumulation type of process. But I had it labeled in a bigger picture situation where this is my preliminary supply. This is my selling climax, okay? And this is our secondary test. And what I was telling you guys in the other video is that we still could have a lower test before we head back up, okay? But in terms of the company, in terms of what they do, they've got solid footing. They're better in terms of price to earnings ratio. They're very profitable. Their margins are struggling a little bit. You want to keep that in mind. But they'll make their adjustments from there, okay? All right. Roblox I also talked about, but just a quick revisit. Pretty much did what we had originally talked about in terms of there's that rising wedge back here. What was happening was we were saying that it's starting to get pretty high up and starting to cross and have divergences. I think where we originally had talked about it was actually a little bit early, like a few days early, and it turned over a few days later. However, look at this. Now, so my stochastic showing that we've gotten kind of low. Also, look at where we're clustering around, right? Because my measurement from the bottom here from the bottom, let's actually adjust it so it's exact, right? And if I use this magnet on this side, I can click it on to exactly. Then let's measure it to the top, right? Exactly to the top. 88. That's off by 2 cents. Okay. But look at this. We're clustering right here. Okay. The 0.382. So it's starting to break down below it, but with the indicators as well, we are starting to curl a little. So there is some interest in terms of buyers stepping in right now. Now, I was always trying to use, there's always certain examples. Like, for example, earnings with Alibaba a little bit ago showed that Alibaba did well, but the markets were dumping that day. So Alibaba ended up going down. In this situation, we actually had the right prediction of, hey, we're probably not going to do too well in terms of earnings and revenue from the company's perspective of, they're reliant upon, kids spending money on certain video games and things like that. So, they weren't expected to be profitable. However, the economy and the macroeconomics actually showed, right? So that dumped, but then because the economy was poised to do well, it actually shot up the next 2 days, right? And then the sell-off didn't really come out till after. So that's the thing about earnings is earnings is a gamble and a toss-up in many cases, and it's best for you to avoid them if you can, simply because the reactions don't always happen to make real good sense, okay? Just like with the NVIDIA one, like I'm showing you, they're giving a certain narrative, but the numbers actually don't look too darn bad in terms of our expectations and whether they beat them or not. They're actually green, okay? So be careful of just headline news. Take a closer look. Now that you guys, especially if you have this trading view pulled up for yourself, you can pull up a bit of these things like the financials, all right? You can head into here and we can talk about these too, the statements, total revenue, etc. Let's talk and converse about these. I know it wasn't originally the focus of the TA and the charting that we have, but let's add into some additional learning so you guys can learn to read this as well. If you had to operate your own business, you're going to have an income statement and a revenue sheet as well at the end of the day. Okay, earnings, dividends, etc. Okay. All right. Let me see if was there anything else, any other. Oh, I wanted to just pull up APE. So AMC had this whole extra share offering thing through this called APE, and there's this new ticker. But look at it, guys. Like, what happened? Ugh, that's ugly, right? Yeah, it shot up for a moment. It had its fibs there. But very quickly, it came right back down to nothing, right? The very beginning. So if you didn't buy in the very first, let's look at this. This is the entire history of AMC APE, okay? Now, one of the things that, let's do the whole last 5 days. If you didn't purchase in the first minute, or if you didn't purchase right down here, right? Then right now your investment is underwater. You just simply got, look at this, pumped, dumped. Now we're going through some form of potentially accumulation, we'll see. But this is way too small in terms of what we've taught is this marble jar it's brand new. There's only a few drops in here, a few marbles. It's very hard to predict what is going to happen with this at this point, okay? So be careful with these memes. AMC, hold on, BBBY. Let's actually pull up Bed Bath & Beyond. Right, had another little pop. Pop back up. Some people got screwed out of it. Pop back up. Look at that. Oh my God, that's the ugliest pump and dump I've seen in a while. Oh yeah, right. Look at that. If I pull up, and let's just copy this in for some people to see. Right. What you end up having is you have buying climax, right? You have your first preliminary supply. You have this automatic reaction and then a secondary test that's in here. Your sign of weakness is very, very apparent. You have an upthrust, and then your last point of supply came back down. Last point of supply zigzagged a little bit, created a little bit of a flag. That's usually what ends up happening here. And it came further down, okay? So Wyckoff, that's ultimately what this is showing here. That's just big money pushing people around, dropped everybody off, took their profits and ran, okay? So be careful, especially those things that get extremely loud in the news. The louder the news is, the more careful you want to be, because keep in mind, they control the news. They you know, they've got the media, you know, paid for. So okay, I feel like I've talked for long enough. I hope that helps you guys out today. Please continue to talk in the graduates a little bit more. You know, sometimes I do feel like I'm just talking to myself, but I understand I've been unable to do live sessions recently. I will be letting you guys know as soon as I can when I can do the live sessions, as soon as my schedule does finally get set this next week. So and I'll let you guys know when you guys can join me and talk and, you know, converse with me and ask questions as I do this. All right, hope to talk to you guys soon. I see you. Have a great rest of your guys' day.